Pokračujeme ďalej po skvelej prezentácii v programe tohto dnešného stretnutia, a teda bude aj medzinárodné. Spojíme sa dnes ešte so skvelou hostkou, ktorá zastúpi tohtoročných laureátov Pritzkerovej ceny za architektúru, a teda francúzske architektonické štúdio. A uvidíme aj dva filmy z francúzskej produkcie v závere dnešného večera pod hlavičkou Dní architektúry a filmu. Pozývame vás sledovať aj ďalej náš program tohto festivalu. Piatok pokračuje ďalšou prezentáciou nášho partnera, a teda opäť sme veľmi radi, že môžeme dať priestor a privítať hostia, ktorý zastupuje spoločnosť Axor, ktorá sa takisto podieľa, ktorej takisto vďačíme za to, že môžeme prinášať takýto bohatý program. Už je tu so mnou Peter Nožka. Vítajte, dobrý večer.
Dobrý večer, ďakujem.
Budete hovoriť o aktivitách vašej firmy. Čo vy a architektúra, teda najmä Dni architektúry a dizajnu, to ma zaujíma. Prečo ste v tom s nami?
Pretože síce patríme pod koncern Hansgrohe, ale značka Axor je značkou, ktorá sa venuje dizajnu a špeciálne spolupracuje s dizajnermi po celom svete, takže je to taká naša srdcovka.
Sme si blízki a teda o dizajne to bude aj v najbližších minútach. No tak poďme do toho, poďme sa zoznámiť so spoločnosťou Axor.
Dobrý večer. Dovolte mi privítať vás na krátkom predstavení značky Axor, ktorá patrí do koncernu Hansgrohe. Axor je značkou dizajnu, ktorá dlhé roky spolupracuje s renomovanými architektami a dizajnérmi, ako napríklad Philip Stark, Jean-Marie Masseau, Antonio Citerio, Patricia Urquiola na navrhovaní svojich kolekcií. Mávam sa, že to... Dnes by sme vám radi predstavili dva posledné projekty. Jeden v spolupráci s britským architektonickým štúdiom, ktorého náhľad ste mali možnosť vidieť vo videu. A druhý, na ktorom pracujeme v lokálnom priestore aj s dizajnérmi, ktorí sú súčasťou aktuálnych dní architektúry a dizajnu. Po svete chodí množstvo výnimočných ľudí, ktorých lákajú archetypy, ikony, zameriavajú sa na umiernený luxus a milujú výrobky, ktoré sú estetické a inovatívne, prípadne vysokofunkčné. A nie je pochyb, že milujú aj výrobky, ktoré obstoja v skúške času. Pokiaľ sa s týmito ľuďmi rozprávate a snažíte sa identifikovať ich potreby a priania, rýchlo zistíte, že ich uvažovanie nie je len krátkodobým názorom, ale jedná sa o životný postoj. Ide im o to, aby sa zbavili všetkého nadbytočného, opustili všetko, čo nedáva zmysel, a aby ich osobnosť dostala priestor, ktorý potrebuje, a mohla vytvoriť niečo, čo má dlhodobú hodnotu. Ide o to podstatné, nie je to funkcionalizmus, ale minimalizmus. Preto sme si položili otázku, ako by sme mohli posunúť minimalizmus na novú úroveň. Na minimalizme je dobré práve to, že sa neustále posúva vpred, a na druhej strane nie je úplne dobré to, že nikdy neviete, kam vás vlastne privedie. Riešenie sme preto hľadali v pochopení jeho vlastného vývoja. Pokiaľ sa vrátime späť po stopách tohto hnutia minimalizmu, zistíme, že minimalizmus vznikol niekedy v 60. rokoch 20. storočia v New Yorku, aj keď tento spôsob uvažovania pravdepodobne fungoval už aj skôr. Napríklad Frank Stella, autor uvedeného citátu, bol zastancom hnutia od jeho prvých hodín. Dokonale vystihuje minimalistické uvažovanie. Čo vidíš, je to, čo vidíš. Ani viac, ani menej. Prosto a jednoducho dokonale vystihuje minimalistický svet. Toto uvažovanie si rýchlo našlo cestu k architektúre a produktovému dizajnu. Jeden z najslavnejších citátov už určite všetci počuli. Menej je viac. Mies van der Rohe výrazne ovplyvnil architektúru a dizajn a aj spôsob, akým dizajn chápeme. Aký by teda mohol byť ďalší krok? Menej, ale lepšie. To je výrok nemeckého produktového dizajnéra Dietera Ramsa. Patrí k mysliteľom a dizajnérom, ktorí šli až na samú podstatu. Jeho 10 test dobrého dizajnu dodnes formuje túto oblasť. Rams tiež raz povedal, že dobrý dizajn prechádza neustálou evolúciou, rovnako ako technológia a kultúra. OK, ale čomu táto evolúcia vlastne vedie? Z nášho pohľadu je to esencia jednoduchosti, stelesnená v kolekcii Axor One. Tento produkt je tak zrozumiteľný, taký nenútený a intuitívny, ale aj empatický, jednoducho skvelý. Snažili sme sa vytvoriť a ponúknuť novú podobu minimalizmu, ešte udržateľnejšiu, precíznejšiu a minimalistickejšiu. Podobu, ktorá by zjednodušovala a obohacovala život. Kolekciu Axor One sme vytvorili spoločne so štúdiom Barber a Osgerby. Vo chvíli, keď sme si dali za cieľ vytvorenie jednej z najminimalistickejších batérií, bolo nám jasné, že chceme spolupracovať práve s týmito Britmi. Axor One je jednou z najminimalistickejších batérií na svete. Strašné slovo. K realizácii mohlo dôjsť len vďaka radikálnej inovácii vedenej logickým uplatňovaním dizajnového myslenia a skúmaním známeho. To viedlo k novému pohľadu na známy archetyp. Pokiaľ sa na tento produkt pozriete, skutočne vyzerá povedome. Zároveň však úplne novo. Čo je nám na ňom známe? Oblúk, sťaby základná podoba batérie. Ide o základnú prepravu, prípadne prietok vody a vašu interakciu s ňou. Na tejto batérii je však aj niečo úplne nové, neznáme. Je to jednoduché. Táto ohnutá trúbka zahŕňa všetko v jednom, vrátane ovládania. Všetky prvky sú prepojené do jediného objektu. Týmto prepojením sme vytvorili celkom nový typ batérie. Podstatu až na koreň. Toto je práve ten radikálne nový prístup, prepojenie batérie a výtoku do jedného celku. Po druhé, akoby zázrakom zmizol motor alebo kartuša batérie. Oddelili sme to, čo vidíte, od toho, čo funguje. Tieto dve odvážne nové myšlienky nám umožnili použiť nové rozmery a proporcie batérie, ktoré sú základom minimálneho a decentného vzhľadu. Dôležitá je čistota a zrozumiteľnosť. Dokonale vyjadrená je celkovým vzhľadom a jedinečnými detailami. Redukovaná forma, štíhly výstup, ploché povrchy, prepojené s mäkkými krivkami a presne spracovanými polomermi zaoblenia. Dokonale harmonické proporcie, to je to, čo vytvára neuveriteľne jednoduchý, elegantný produkt, ktorý nájde uplatnenie v každej kúpeľni. A čo na to povedali samotní autori? Chceli sme vytvoriť nový spôsob interakcie a nestratiť pritom pocit luxusu. Vydestilovali sme samotnú esenciu objektu a Axor One je spojením čistoty, sofistikovanosti a v skutku novej interakcie umožňujúcej precíznosť s intuitívnym ovládaním. Presnosť ovládania, nová interakcia, pocit luxusu. Pri navrhovaní batérie ide o skvelé, ale pomerne náročné kľúčové koncepčné prvky. Ako sme sa s nimi pri vývoji Axor One vyrovnali? Spustenie a zastavenie vody a ovládanie teploty Všetko základné sa odohráva pomocou rukovete. Obsluha je bez námahy, veľmi intuitívna a maximálne presná. V duchu princípu všetko v jednom. Pre spustenie alebo zastavenie vody stačí stlačiť spoločný ovládač, pre nastavenie teploty jednoducho otočiť. Technológia Select poskytuje vyšší komfort a presné ovládanie vody. Základom konceptu Select bolo vyvinúť nový typ uzatváracieho ventilu, ktorý umožňuje spúšťať a vypínať prúd vody stlačením tlačidla, nie jeho otáčaním. Umožňuje mechanické ovládanie, to znamená, že je stabilné a spoľahlivé. Umiestnením kartuše pod umývadlo sme získali slobodu dať batériám Axor One takú eleganciu a vycibrenosť, akú majú. A okrem dizajnovej slobody sa toto riešenie ukázalo byť veľmi vhodným aj z hľadiska jednoduchej a rýchlej inštalácie a servisu, keď je takmer nemožné urobiť chybu. Vyvinuli sme špeciálne dvomyselný systém vychádzajúci z bajonetového spoja. Stačí len odpojiť vodovodné rozvody a jednoducho uvoľniť teleso kartuše z bajonetového spoja. Ako vidíte na tomto obrázku, náš prístup funguje aj s bežnou keramikou, nielen s umývadlami na mieru. No a nakoniec pár slov autorov. Ako otestovať archetyp? Hľadaním výtvarného stvárnenia pomocou vedy, invencie a vzájomnej interakcie. Axor One je sentimentom vody, ale predznamenáva nový spôsob jej ovládania. Je oveľa presnejšie a dokonale prepracované. Produkty Axor One sú jedinečné, umocnené našim dizajnovým pohľadom na vec. Kolekcia Axor One je tvorená 31 výrobkami prepojenými spoločnou filozofiou, tak ako ste mali možnosť vidieť vo videu, pre všetky oblasti kúpeľní. Je to obrovskou, ohromnou výhodou a pridanou hodnotou pre spotrebiteľov, ktorí sú orientovaní na dizajn. Druhým projektom, ktorým tu chceme predstaviť, je nadstavba na kolekciu Axor My Edition. Podľa autora tejto kolekcie, Andreasa Diefenbacha z Phoenix Design, Axor My Edition nie je batéria, je to monolit alebo kus nábytku. Je fúziou zjednodušenia a bohatosti, prostoty a luxusu. Nanovo je batéria definovaná ako rozhranie medzi architektúrou, zážitkom a vlastným ja, s možnosťou utvárania a premeny. Keď sa na túto batériu pozriete, ponúka množstvo rôznych individuálnych riešení vďaka farebnej škále a kombinácii tela batérie a pohľadovej platničky, ktorá môže byť nielen vo farbe kovu, ale aj z materiálov, ktoré nie sú pre batériu úplne typické. Mramor, sklo, drevo, koža a podobne. V spolupráci s Petrom Oláhom a Larsom Kemperom Axor prináša navyše riešenia s odkazom na tradičnú prácu sklárov, ktorým bol tento región preslávený. Pohľad značky Axor prezentuje konateľ spoločnosti. Axor My Glass koncept je potenciálne ďalším rozšírením kolekcie Axor My Edition. Konceptom chceme ponúknuť zákazníkom možnosť ďalšej individualizácie kúpeľní s využitím skla v kvalite Optivite ako ušľachtilého a hygienického materiálu. Sklenenými plochami zároveň vieme poskytnúť architektom a dizajnérom novú platformu pre hru s interiérovým osvetlením. Petra a Larsa sme oslovili ako expertov pre prácu so sklom. Vďaka svojej realizáciám majú výborné kontakty na sklárske dielne v severných Čechách, kde má sklárske remeslo niekoľkostoročnú tradíciu. No a pohľad ešte Petra a Larsa. Vo všeobecnosti môžeme povedať, že náš dizajn je inšpirovaný starými technológiami rezania skla pomocou rezov, ktoré odrážajú svetlo takmer zo všetkých uhlov. Táto hra svetla a odrazov mu dodáva vlastnosti diamantu. Na to sme použili najčistejšie a najpriehľadnejšie optické sklo bez akejkoľvek farby a bublín, respektíve bubbles free. Takže to bolo v skratke, čo sa týka nášho nového konceptu, ktorý práve dokončujeme a na ktorom spolupracovali dizajnéri Peter Olách a Lars Kemper, ktorí sú aj partnermi tohto podujatia. Ďakujem za pozornosť a tešíme sa na ďalšie prípadné stretnutie.
No fantastické zábery, pekná prezentácia, teda naozaj od spoločnosti, ktorá rozmýšľa nad dizajnom. Ďakujem veľmi pekne Petrovi Nožkovi, ktorý bol hosťom zo spoločnosti Axor, hosťom na Dňoch architektúry a dizajnu, ktoré táto spoločnosť veľmi významne podporuje. Ďakujeme veľmi pekne.
Ďakujem aj ja a pekný večer ešte.
A ten náš večer, ten sa bude niesť už vo francúzskom duchu a budeme sledovať aj 2 francúzske filmy a aj dáme priestor teraz francúzskému architektonickému štúdiu a pokračujeme prvou ligou, pokračujeme tohtoročnými laureátmi Pritzkerovej ceny za architektúru, takže naozaj exkluzívny program pre ďalšie minúty dnešného večera. Predstaví sa vám štúdio Lacaton Vassal. Už od začiatku tvorby rezonujú v celosvetovom architektonickom povedomí. Ich prvé drobné stavby reflektujú severoafrickú skúsenosť so svetlom, vzduchom, prírodnou ventiláciou. Tento špecifický naturel sa od malých zadaní postupne pretavil do veľkých zákaziek a stal sa ich typickým rukopisom. Každým projektom otvárajú nové uhly pohľadu so zámerom nájsť originálne, ale racionálne a logické riešenia. Samostatnou, oceňovanou kapitolou ich tvorby je séria rekonštrukcií prefabrikovaných stavieb na bývanie. Predsadené plášte balkónov a otváranie fasád zlepšujú kvalitu a komfort užívateľov. Lacaton a Jean-Philippe Vassal systematicky poukazujú na sociálny a udržateľný rozmer architektúry a otvárajú koncepčné alternatívy k súčasným diskusiám o sociálnom bývaní. Všetko aktuálne, skvelé a veľké témy a práve Lacaton už máme na linke do nášho štúdia. Anne, good evening, bonsoir.
Bonsoir, good evening.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
It's honor to have you with us. A budeme pokračovať v tomto prenose aj diskusiou s Henrietou Moravčíkovou, ktorá bude nasledovať po prezentácii. And I'm just saying that my colleague Henrieta Moravčíková will lead discussion after your talk. Yeah. But first of all, we are looking forward to hearing your presentation. If you are ready, we are prepared.
So I'm ready. So thank you very much for your invitation and good evening to everyone. I will share my screen because I've prepared a presentation of our work. Okay, I guess it works.
Thank you. Thank you. We can see it.
Okay. Just try to stop the. Yeah. Just a second, because I think that I should not be on. Yeah. Good. So thank you very much for listening to this presentation. And today I will present our work and our projects through 4 topics which are very important in our approach to architecture. So the first one is inhabiting. Inhabiting is for us a very important concept in architecture, which qualifies any space in general, but especially, of course, the space for living, the space for housing. Since the very beginning, we have been specially involved in housing projects with always the same question: which basic qualities must housing offer to inhabitants? And our approach is based on 2 main principles: the generosity of space, giving freedom and comfort, giving pleasure, making space which redefine possibility of well-being, and all of this redefine a kind of luxury. And second is about the economy, to make so that all these qualities can be achieved and affordable for everyone. So inhabiting beyond the functional, freedom, comfort, generosity of space, pleasure, and luxury for all. The space for living must be generous, comfortable, adaptable, flexible, luxurious, affordable. That's for us a basic principle. So all of this is projects that we have already built. Dwellings must offer freedoms of usage to generate possibilities for evolution, for interpretation and appropriation. The space for use is important to develop. Housing must offer as much extra space as programmed space to promote relationships within spaces, to bring about pleasurable situations. Extra space is a space non-programmed, free for use, which we can add to the basic program, and that gives this freedom of use for the inhabitants. So our goal in general in the housing would be to provide with extra space as much as program space. It means that for a standard housing, we aim always to try to double the surface of use. So of course, it means that it's important to work with the economy in order to make all of this affordable. It's important to consider for us that the dwelling should be much more than the minimum function. Extra space, additional facilities. In this sketch, you will see the comparison in our approach. Compare on the left to a standard dwelling. And here I talk about social housing, I talk about basic housing, an apartment of 2 bedrooms, 60 to 65 square meters. And for us, it's important to consider that this basic space should be completed with additional private space, winter gardens, terraces, balconies, and program space, minimum plus 50% of the habitable surface, but up to 100% would be for us the best. All this provides with more fluidity, freedom, appropriation. All rooms have large doors, large openings to the outside, which creates a facility of moving by inside or by outside, just as a house on the same level. To achieve these qualities, and again compared to the way how many standard housing are built with bearing walls, which limits the flexibility and the space of use, and quite narrow windows all around. We like working with more open structures, large span, free facade, which allow to make these large platforms only with few columns, which offer the flexibility, adaptability, capacity of evolution. In addition, this system of construction is very economical because it's all prefabricated, and it allows to build larger for the same cost, which is very important to make it affordable. And all of this allows also to think in a very good way about climate, energy saving, at the same time providing with more uses and more space for use. Again, in the standard, the way to make saving energy leads very often to create isolation around, while an extra efficiency as temperate intermediate space. So we can provide with passive energy systems and as well as extra space for new uses. So just a few projects that we have recently completed. This one is a project of 59 housing in a city in the east of France. And it's a project that we did with a client which we already work with, and we share the same ideas of generosity of space, of working out of standards in terms of space to provide with a much more quality of living. So the goal, this is social housing subsidized by public funds. So it means that we have a limited budget and that we cannot exceed it. But anyways, the goal together with the client was to provide the largest apartment as we could. So again, we use a prefabricated system which allowed to make free space with a very little footprint of the structure, using minimum concrete materials or steel materials, and also which allow to provide with large interior space without any impact of the structure. And then the facade and the partitions, which are light partitions and allow to complete the organization of the house. And this provides with apartments which are much closer than of the concept of the house than collective housing. So all apartments have, like this one, an additional winter garden in front, or an additional garden when they are on the ground floor, or balconies if they are on the upper floor. Here you can see the living room with this 10 meters large without any columns. And the winter gardens of us nearly 3 meters deep, which is a continuity of the living space. And this facade, which closes the interior space for the winter, can be widely opened and expand the space for living at the good season, or just between the living and the winter gardens. So this is some of the apartments. This one is a duplex apartment. You can see here all these systems of curtains, which allows to work with passive systems, so, and allow to have these large glass windows, because in winter it make the thermal insulation, but it's a mobile thermal insulation, so that you are not forced to keep it all along the year, and you can, when the weather is much better, to have the benefit of the large glass windows. Here, the connection with this winter garden, that is an extra space unprogrammed, so it's just the will of the people, the appropriation that makes finally the end. Another project very recently completed with the same client in the same city. It's housing for seniors. It's a small town in the periphery of a bigger town where people live most of the time in houses. But for people who arrive to 65, 70, 75, they prefer to leave houses and live in apartments to have a less place to maintain. So this is a project of 18 individual apartments with community space at every level. We have 2 levels. Again, it's social housing, so it means that it's a very low rents for the people coming there. So all the apartments have one bedroom and the same amount of space as a winter garden and terrace or a garden. Here, this is the community space of the first level, which is a large greenhouse where the ladies and the men come to discuss and to meet every day. And this is one of the apartments, but they are more or less all similar, which is the opening onto the outdoor corridor, and then the opening towards the winter garden and the terrace. Here is the first floor. So with all these systems of double facade, curtains, solar curtains, that provides with the quality of comfort in all seasons, winter or summer. And recently, the inhabitants has come inside, has brought their furniture. And again, it's 18 different ways of furnishing, of living inside. Always surprising to see if people have the freedom to occupy a space, how much creativity they have to do it. Another project in a much more dense situation, it's in Geneva. It's a tower block of 19 levels, a mixed use with the first levels occupied by offices and 14 upper levels by housing. So it's rented housing. All the levels, whether it is office or housing, are open platforms with columns in order to create the maximum flexibility and to make the facade independent of the grade of the columns, and in the middle the core for stairs and elevators. And this is one of the typical level for the housing. Has the orientation as a long part on north and another part on south. We worked around two staircases in order to avoid any only orientation on north. So we have on every side 4 apartments. 4 apartments are in the corners, while the others have a double orientation, and this in the middle, the small one, they are duplex apartments. And all around we have a winter garden of different widths, which wraps the building and creates a second envelope, which makes an intermediate climate, but also an extra space for the use, absolutely connected with all the rooms, bedrooms or living rooms. So this is why we have this difference of dimension. So this is one of the plan. You can see here this possibility, like in a house on a garden, to move, of course, from inside, but also when everything is open, there is also a possibility of mobility by the winter garden to move to one bedroom, to the living room, or to the kitchen, to another. So it expands the facility of moving inside. So some pictures here empty before the occupation. You see here the winter garden and the extra balcony, and all these large glass windows which close the interior space. Only this one only is heated. The winter garden, which is not heated, and here the closure of the winter garden with all the system of curtains adapted to the situation. So, and again, the appropriation of the inhabitants, starting from a similar space, which is always very different according to the moods, the desires, the wills, and the pleasures of the inhabitants. So housing is the most beautiful challenge for contemporary society, definitely. But yet it's also very critical, because in many cities, the need of housing is increasing, and most often it's not filled. There are not enough dwellings provided for the need. So it's why it's at the same time very critical, and it's why we have to work so much and to participate also as architects to change the situation and to make the housing much better. Because the good housing is a condition of well-being. It's a condition of quality of life, of good social relations. Having a home is the most important thing for everyone. And this is always a fundamental right. So we can say that housing is a basic unit that makes a city. The unit of measurement multiplied by 10, 100, 1,000, 1 million, which means that it's one after one. So it means that it's not just an issue of quantity. It's also and before all, it's an issue of quality of living and also quality of comfort given to the inhabitants. So housing must be removed from its financial and social classification and must be removed from the financialization of the housing as a financial product, which most of the time leads to reduce more and more the space for living space, reduce all the spaces for living, and makes more and more standardization of the housing. The second topic, which is for us very important, is about climate. It's a very important subject, and climate and architecture have been always closely linked. So climate is taking care, working with climate means taking benefit of the natural resources, saving energy while getting a more pleasant, comfortable life. So It means to search and to establish an exchange with climate instead of protecting from it. It is to take the climate as a resource instead of struggling against, which is today the reasoning and the approach that prevail in the norms and all regulations about comfort and energy for designing buildings. So how to use positively the resource offered by the sun, the air, the light. We have been always interested and concerned by a very simple system, which also involve people action instead of sophisticated technologies. And we found a great inspiration and learning in looking to agriculture and to the technology and the space of the greenhouses that we have observed and studied carefully since we were students. In most of the projects, we want to introduce the principle of these greenhouses to the principle of double envelope that generates space with intermediate climate, very efficient to regulate the comfort and save energy for heating, and which also provide extra space for you. That was the first house that we built nearly 30 years ago, which is still inhabited by the family who was our client. This is a project for social housing of 14 apartments in the west of France. And here we used a combined system with a concrete large platform and 3 ranks of agricultural greenhouses in which some installation have been made to create interior parts, but large parts have been let as a greenhouse for the inhabitants. And when the greenhouse is not easy to use because we are more levels, it's a more dense situation, then we always try to provide with winter gardens around the rooms, around the living space, with again all these systems that we have learned also from the greenhouse, agricultural greenhouse technology, which is very clever in the way to use the climate to protect when it's necessary, summer, winter, sun, isolation, and so on. So it provides with those very light spaces, but with these different elements, it allows to provide with very nice space and a good comfort. So I will not comment these diagrams, but just to say that the winter gardens are represent a very important tool for saving energy and for creating comfort in winter, summer, winter when it is closed. It's a benefit of temperature because the winter garden is heated by the sun, and it protects. It make a protection from the interior space to the outside. While in summer, it provides with large loggias, and the glass window is not touched by the sun. But it's also valuable for public buildings. This one is a museum, which we have a total double envelope, again, which creates an intermediate space and climate between inside and the outside. But very early in our project, we try to introduce these elements, and this one was a university in Grenoble, and the library, the library is as in front is this space of winter garden with this bougainvillea, which find here a comfortable place to live. Another topic is the topic of uses. We think that this is one of the meaning of architecture, to design space for uses, and we pay attention in designing space and project to let place to uses. So space, as for housing, must offer freedoms of usage to generate possibilities for evolution, for interpretation, for appropriation. So any project, housing or any other program must offer extra space and program space free for use. And again, as much extra space as program space to invent uses. So this is the example of a school of architecture that we built some years ago. A school of architecture, double space and program space, a structure to invent uses. So the School of Architecture, as probably many of you know, if you are architect, you have been educated in such places. What is important is to give the possibility of escaping the program, and very often the program is very restricted and don't allow to have enough appropriation. So how to create flexibility, capacity, creativity to create multiple paths, appropriation, and interpretation. And again, starting from the basic program, the extra space allows to give all this additional facility, additional space, which create the invention for the school. So this is school completed. And we worked with the maximum surface and volume possible in our plot, because there were already a lot of outdoor public space around, and we thought that it was more interesting to create, if we needed more public space, to create it indoor and not outdoor. So that this volume represents twice more than the volume needed for the program of the school itself. So it's a very simple structure with always a double or triple height, which means that this is a phase of the structure before the School of Architecture is settled inside, but it also could become in 20, 30 years something else, because the structure is capable enough to receive different other programs. So here we have 7 meters high, so it's possible to have this double height, but also to redivide the space in 2 or 3. On the ground floor is 9 meters high, so it's possible to redivide in 2 or 3 levels, and to introduce light floors with a mix of steel and wood, which allows to create intermediate floors for the programmed activity. And it creates this double space of use. In green, it's a space of program, and in blue, it's an extra space, which is appropriable by the students and by the school. So it means that for us, it's important to give this margin of possibilities, and not to, a program is always a result of hard negotiations and hard comparison between the needs, the wish, and the budget. And it's important to try to escape from this organization, to provide with more space, because more space is also more creativity. So here it's a space of 1,000 square meters with 9 meters on the ceiling, which is supposed to be the place for building models at scale 1:1, for creating many things. And we can see that the students use this space in a very good way, but it's also a space for concerts or for parties, which is very easy to transform into another place. The auditorium, which is not just a space for education, but it's organized so that they can also organize some shows, some conference. And in this school, they have a great interest for dance and theater. So they organize a lot of shows or theater evenings with these large doors of the auditorium, which can open and make one space with a square outside. And here it's a level for the medium level, for the library, for the classrooms, but also, again, all these classrooms, they open to extra space And the extra space is always used after a negotiation between the different classes, the different group of students, to know how they can use it. And the rule is always to return the space to the original capacity in order to give to the next group the maximum possibility of using it. So here you can see this, this extra space, but always a lot of interventions, a lot of appropriations for by the students. So this one again, it's the level of the studios of teaching, the studios of project, and here it's empty because it's a moment in between classes in the holidays. But as soon as the semester starts, there is a program of interventions of appropriation in this space, some workshops, exhibitions, but also sometimes they use it for doing sport or just to rest on the terraces which surrounds the building. And these terraces are created by a ramp with slow slope, which is running along the building, and these serve all the levels until the roof, like a street that can be used by pedestrians, but also by bikes, and very occasionally by a car or a truck if there is something to deliver at the different levels. Especially on the roof here, it's a kind of race that they organize every year. And the rooftop is a large square, open to students, but also to the public sometimes, where they organize also some festivals in relation with the city performances, city museums. And this one was outdoor cinema, which was organized one of the last summer. And all of this is also, the students are part of the organization of this, and also here they were part of the construction of the screen. So it's a school which really allows the city to enter the school, and also allows a lot of projects from the students and their groups and associations. The last topic, which is also very important for us, it's about make do. Make do is about using what we already have and make the better use of it. Make do is about considering the existing as a resource, as a value, and not seeing it always as unsatisfactory, and not always thinking that it should be systematically replaced to make better. So make do with the existing, with people, with nature, with climate, with economy, with intelligence, to invent or reinvent with what we already have in hands, to do more with less. So every situation is an opportunity made of multiple elements, of qualities, of capacities that can be integrated, reactivated, reused. The existing offers already enough material so that it allows to reduce drastically the need of new materials and the need of always using new territories to build. We have a lot, and we should make a better use of it. Make do means taking with you the values of the existing situation and its strengths, and not making against or denying them. It means extending existing situation with accuracy and precision. In this approach, rather than restructure in depth, modify heavily, demolish or replace, our strategy is rather to add, to join, to span existing structure, to superimpose structures, spaces, and uses, and finally to create a new space, a new place, which is recomposed with existing capacity and those which are added. It's an economy of gesture, of material, an economy in short, favorable to the essential, and which does not oppose, on the contrary, the spirit of invention. So we can do a lot with what we already have. We can invent, we can be creative, but this requires new approach, accurately observing from inside, as close as possible. This means understanding, paying attention to the existing with a positive approach to reveal values and exalt the qualities. And always to ask, what can we do with it? With a voluntary target of using 100% of what is already on the place instead of systematically replace and redo. And we can say that today the existing situation are the new material for the projects. So making with the nature, trees, soils, flowers, animals, with everything already there, making with the existing as an opportunity, which allows to create more sustainable master planning, another way of making the city. This is an example of a project that we were involved in some years ago. It's a competition. This was a very nice, a wonderful place close to a city in the east, in the west of France, with a large green area, like a kind of forest. And what was requested by the program was to build on that place more than 300 houses. So immediately we understood that to make 300 houses on this plot was absolutely cover the land was in a way impossible to do in keeping all the values of the green space already existing, with all these varieties of birds, of flowers, of trees, and so on. But also some abandoned buildings which were planned to be demolished. But finally, the proposal we did for the competition, we didn't want to make the houses, but we said that it was more relevant in such a place to try to concentrate the construction and to make collective housing instead of individual housing. So we proposed to make this kind of structures with 3 to 5 to 6 levels sometimes, but perched on high pilotis at 12 meters above the ground, so that it could be possible to keep the forest below, and more than that, to allow to the forest to recover, because the forest was regressing, and the process could happen after 10 years, and after 10 to 40 years, we could again find again the forest as it was before. So, and doing that, we could have a very low, very small footprint of the construction on the ground, with just columns and just some stairs, or here and there some elevators touching the ground, which would not ask to change the ground, which could remain totally natural, and that could remain public. As a public park or as a public garden, while the inhabitants could live 12 meters above on those apartments. The corridor at 9 meters, which would allow to disturb all the housing, and on housing the view, which was fantastic around and on the top of the trees. So unfortunately, we didn't win the competition. So now the 300 houses have been built on the place. Make do with abandoned buildings means also reuse, re-give life, reinvent uses. That was what we found in this place. Again, a competition we were invited to. It was a former big atelier in the middle of construction of boats. Here you can see this building, but all this place has been dismantled 20 or 30 years ago, and just this building is remaining there, and which was kept because in the memory of the inhabitants and all the workers, this place has for them a great value, because it was the very last space where the pieces of the boats were assembled before the boats were going to the sea. So they kept this building, and some years later, the city and the region has the idea to put inside a contemporary art, which is a regional collection of contemporary art. So the brief asked to fill this space with floors, and in order to create this 7,000 square meters of half for reserves and half for exhibition rooms. But for us, when we visited the space, we thought immediately that it was a mistake to lose this amazing void that would change building inside, would change radically the capacity of the space. And instead, we propose to keep the void, to keep the building, but to make a double in order to put inside, to implement the program. And you see behind this large transparent skin, this box that contains the reserves of the art pieces, and also the exhibition room, which need to be in a very controlled climate for humidity, temperature, and so on. So we could keep the void and give it as an extra space to the program of the new project. And this is the new part with the exhibition room. And this part is on the top of the box of reserve and exhibition rooms. And this is an extra space also under the ceiling, which also allows to see all around the landscapes, the harbor, but also the sea on the north. So here it's the face-to-face between the new part and the existing one, with this void, which was supposed to be public circulation crossing the building. And the view on this large space, which now is used for exhibition of big art pieces, but also for some other events, which invite many people. So in the last part of this topic, make do is something very important for us. And we are working on this subject since many years. It's about make do with the housing blocks to transform, reuse, upgrade, to extend life, to reinvent, and again, to give more with less. So all these places that we have in most of the peripheries of the cities, are today in many places very critical. We especially studied these modern large housing developments massively built in the suburbs, in the cities all over the world in 60s, 70s. And at the time, we have to remind that they carried a vision of the future, very optimistic, a modern way of living, affordable to everyone. But today, so this one in France, one of the first housing developments in the suburb of Paris. But today, these places are most often rejected, most often considered as a more than problem, as an opportunity. And after the utopia of the 60s, of the new way of life, came the disenchantment until the critical situation that we know today here and there. So here it's an image of this is the same place as here. It's an image of the demolition, which in France is very massive. Already since 15 years, already 200,000 dwellings has been demolished, and not all rebuilt. But however, you can find to these places values, and they have still a potential of transformation that can be revealed and developed. So we studied carefully these places while from the early 2000, when the French government decided this program of urban renovation based on demolition and reconstruction. And the comparison is is extremely obvious that in the program of demolition and reconstruction of standard housing, the cost per dwelling is 165,000 euros. And in all the studies on those places that we did, we supported the principle of transformation, of extending life or giving more living space. And in most of the case, the cost of this transformation is estimated to 55,000 euros per dwelling. But in a way, it's not enough to stop the demolition, and in France there are still a lot of demolition. So we did this research that we started in the early 2000s to see how it was possible to convince not to demolish and to do something better with those developments, which again have a potential of transformation. They can have value that we can reveal and redevelop. And we arrived to this conclusion: never demolish, always add, extend, give more, to do more and better. And we arrived to this conclusion that transformation is a solution instead of demolition and rebuild. So I will show you to conclude in this example, which is one that we completed in the city of Bordeaux 3 years ago. This is one of the very representative development of the housing of the 60s. This is in very close to the city center in Bordeaux. It's a housing development of something like 4,000 dwellings. So at the time, it was not considered as a good place to live, but as it is very close to the city center, step by step, the transport came, the public equipments, and it has really become a good neighborhood in the city. But anyway, for many buildings, most of the people, they were looking at with really negative eyes, except those who are living there. So we had to work on these 3 buildings, which were built in very late in the 70s, at the end of this big program. In the city of Bordeaux, it's quite a prominent neighborhood because the city is very low, and this is a stone city, while these developments of 15 levels are really seen from everywhere. So this is the 3 blocks on which we had to work, and these 3 blocks, the decision to tear down has been taken by the city and by the owner more than 10 years ago. And regarding this decision, finally the maintenance of the building has failed, and the building became in quite a bad state inside, not the structure, but inside. When finally a new director came to this social housing company and decided that that was for him a mistake to envisage demolishing those blocks, which represent 530 dwellings. And we started the campaign of maintenance, of interior refurbishment, and arrived to convince the city not to demolish and to engage a process of transformation. So what is important is to never stay at this from this point of view, looking from far away, looking from outside, and just saying, oh, it's big blocks, it's not interesting, it's ugly. The most important is to go inside immediately and to see that what you see as a block finally is an incredible amount of individual situations, of places where the inhabitants has given a personal value by furniture, decoration, collections. It's amazing to visit all these places and to see it's like a little museum where people have really taken care to the quality of it. And after the visit of all these places, you never see the block as they are. You see them as a multitude of situation of inhabiting. So we started the process of design in that way, starting from inside and to check very carefully, to inventory first what were the values of the place that we should not lose, and then second to identify what was missing, the technical equipment that should be changed. It was a very careful inventory of all these details in order to improve everything, starting from the quality of living, starting from the living space. Because in this process of transformation, it's important not to consider only the technical aspect, but it's important to consider that every budget which is spent to improve the technique should also benefit to the quality of the space and to the improvement of the quality of space. And just these photos to show what I was explaining about these amazing interior situations. And so what we proposed was to not to touch the interior, because most of them were in this good quality. And also we proposed to make the transformation without removing the inhabitants. It means that all the process should be designed, should be defined with the fact that all the people will stay inside. So it was important to avoid any important works on walls, on changing the structures or changing typologies. But in fact, by the additions of a sufficient extra space, it solves a lot of technical problems, and it brings also this additional quality and additional space which is missing. So we propose to keep all the different typologies, to make an addition in front of the south facade of 4 meters, including a winter garden plus a balcony, and then to transform all the windows into doors, glass doors, so that every room could have direct access to the winter garden. So, and that was done on all the dwellings. Here is a part of the long block. It's a part with 1 staircase and 3 apartments per level. And the addition on the south facade, which makes sure that all the apartments have a benefit of this, because they are either double orientation or one orientation on south, and then opening all these windows to transform it into doors. And this the same system is applied to all levels for all apartments. And the process of construction was also determined very early in the process, because we have still in mind that because it's occupied during the construction, it's very important to think how to make the works without disturbing too much the inhabitants. We had 2 or 3 apartments free, so that the families could go for the day if we were doing too much noise, but every evening they return to their apartment. So no one has moved the furniture or anything. So here, this is a process of the additions. It was prefabricated elements, and at the end, the final result, which transforms radically the building. To go to see much closer this process of addition. This is a module that was built 2 kilometers away and just brought on the place, and from the track just on the construction site. Here it's its foundations, because all this extension, they are self-supported. They are not supported by the existing building, but it's a totally independent structure. And the process of placing this module with two workers guiding the place, and then starting the level above with the columns, the floors. And when we have built enough levels, we can start the process of opening the windows. And the commitment was to make, because at the moment we are making this extension, it's out of the building, so it's not disturbing the life inside. But at the moment we start to touch the existing facade, there is a moment of disturbance for the inhabitants. So the commitment was, and the process of the works was to change the facade in a maximum 2 days. So the first days it was they cut all the handrail, and the day after they brought the glass windows, and a few weeks later the winter garden is ready, and the inhabitants can move to it. A view in front. So first we place inside a kind of protection with windows so that the family can stay inside, and then the cutting the handrail and the frames of the glass windows until it comes to the end, with after just the operation of refurbishing the threshold. And from this existing situation, it creates this one, which changed radically not only the existing apartment, but it gives an extra space which in many cases more or less doubles the surface of usage of the apartment. And this process, which starts from the inside, which is based on the improvement of the quality of living, of the quality of space, finally produce a strong, very strong transformation of the building itself. And then we did also some additional large apartments on the roof, which was an opportunity to make a small densification in a very nice conditions of living. And this project finally provides this quality of living. And now it's a place in the city where everyone would like to be there, because also it's also low rents. And just to conclude, a very few numbers just to show how these works of transformation are relevant in many aspects. 100% of the existing has been conserved, 20% with heavy renovation, like the hallways, changing the elevators, new bathrooms, and the electricity, while 80% had a light renovation, just sometimes painting or wallpapers, plus 53% of surface added, minus 60% of primary energy consumption, just thanks to the winter gardens, which and the change of the glass window, which for a much better isolating glass. 100% of the building has been occupied during the works, no move of the inhabitants, and also at the end, no increase of the rent plus charges for the inhabitants. And the cost of this transformation is 50,000 euros per dwelling, while the estimation by the City of Demolition and Rebuild was 160,000. And 80% of this works has been funded by the social housing company itself. So in terms also of the comparison, the balance of the carbon footprint, we can see that the refurbishment with expansion, as we did in this project, finally consumes half of CO2 than the same amount of dwellings in the case of demolition and rebuilding. And in the cities, there are so many opportunities, so many cases like this one, where this transformation can be made without removing the inhabitants who very often are really attached to their neighborhood. This means that it's necessary to have a close observation and a detailed inventory of the city, of what is already there, and the strategy of case by case. But in all aspects, the transformation of the existing made do with the existing is a great benefit, more sustainable, more economical, and which makes the city affordable and more pleasant to live to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Na Dňoch architektúry a dizajnu Lacaton zo štúdia Lacaton and Vassal. Thank you for very inspiring presentation. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Allow me now introduce to you my dear colleague, Professor Henrieta Moravčíková. She will now talk with you.
Okay.
Dear Anne, I mean, we already met once in Florence by the prize giving of Big Mat Award, so
yes.
This was not necessary to introduce us.
That's
but
true.
I'm very happy that the first time we met, as you have received this Big Mat International Award for the Museum of Contemporary Art in Dunkirk,
Yeah.
and now.
Exactly.
We meet again by the occasion when you are a very fresh laureate of the Pritzkerovej Prize. So I would like to congratulate you.
Thank you very much.
I mean, the biggest award that an architect can receive. And I have to start with Pritzker actually, because many architects and critics, and I mean part of general public, welcomed your honor very positively, because we do much hope that this is a kind of a signal of a paradigm change. Let's hope. And it was a wonderful coincidence for me, or not a coincidence, but a wonderful situation that the chair of the jury was Alejandro Aravena, and then you as a laureate. This is really something very special for me personally as well. So congratulations once again.
Thank you.
And I would like to start with a quote from the statement that actually Alejandro gave after or during the prize giving. So I quote him: "Lacaton and Vassal are radical in their delicacy and bold through their subtleness, balancing and respectful, yes, straight-out approach to the built environment." How do you feel when somebody like this respected person says something like this to you? Was it kind of let's say, satisfaction to be on this award or prize giving?
It's clear that, of course, the prize was a surprise for us, because in a way we never thought to do it. But what you mentioned, what you quote from Alejandro, is for us it's an immense pleasure and satisfaction to see how people have finally understood so well what we are doing since many years, and describe it with so much accuracy and truth. So for us, it was really we are really deeply happy of this award, and as you mentioned at the beginning, we are also even more happy that finally we received so many messages, so many calls from people from everywhere, some who know, some who don't know, young people, older people. We said so kind words. That finally for us it was clear that the prize we have received, we share it with so many people, because finally it reveals that a lot of people think the same as us and do the same as us. And it's good that the prize can give visibility to these attitudes, which are not very well known, which are difficult to define, to continue to do. So in many aspects, it's finally it has revealed a kind of community.
That's great. That must be a wonderful feeling. I stay a little more, let's say, by this big occasion, because there was another, for me, very interesting part of the jury statement, because I would again quote because it's better. They put it like that you are not only Lacaton Vassal, not only have they defined an architectural approach that renews the legacy of modernism, but they have also proposed an adjustment definition of the very profession of architecture. Very strong words, very, how to say, a big message. But what would I like to ask is your attitude or your relation to modernism, because this is something also very crucial, I would say, in this kind of discussion. Do you think that it is still somehow unfinished project, as Jürgen Habermas put it, or you saw that that it's more like obsolete idea, and that you are not even somehow touched to this kind of let's say, discussions about modernism?
It's clear that for us, the modernism is our background, because when we studied architecture, it was an important part of our study and of our interest, because for us it was clear that the modernism has really changed the architecture, has brought this kind of idea of more democratic space, more has introduced in a way this kind of simple pleasure of the space. And the beginning of the modernism was in this way very generous in space, very generous in light, in view. And of course, we can analyze that afterwards there were some evolutions which are not so interesting, or which were too constraining, too restrictive, and but it's not for this reason that we can say that it's obsolete. I think that it's like everything in the history. Who are we to judge that the history would be obsolete? We have to understand the interest of things, to keep what is the best, and to continue on it. And it's what we think about the modernism. We are not just people admiring it. We have studied the qualities. We have studied what it has brought to architecture as evolutions, as qualities, and it's on this that we take that with us, and of course not to reproduce, but to have it in our background, in our tools, and to make something with that, but from our time, from our contemporary time. So for us, it was a great step in the architecture, the modernism, and we want to keep that in mind, and to continue building on that, to continue because we think that we don't think that it's interesting to always criticize the past models and always try to replace by new models. for us, it's more interesting to try to find a kind of intelligent continuity, generous continuity. We are much more in this approach of saying, because in a way we always find something positive in everything.
Yeah, great, because looking at your presentation, I saw that there are so many common thoughts and common ideas you have with this great modernist legacy, talking about social concerns and talking about ethics, and also these kind of inspiring people and inspiring society to move, to be active, to interact. This was so visible on your presentation that always there is something happening in your architecture. So I'm happy that you put it like this. There is another very interesting point I heard from you in another lecture, that you characterized your strategy or strategy of your office as liberté and plaisir, which means freedom and happiness, or freedom and joy that creates a kind of happiness. So isn't it important? For me, it was a little bit like a feeling of a legacy of this French way of culture. Am I completely wrong, or there is something like connection with this French tradition?
I don't know, it's part of the French tradition, but I think in a way it's the values of looking for well-being, simple things, looking for essential, is in a way it's something universal. And it's probably what we think in designing architecture, that it's always something very complex to do projects, because we start from very complex situation, very complex issues. The technique is complex. But for us, we have always in mind that all this complexity at the end should not appear anymore. Because the meaning, the sense, the goal of the architecture is to provide with space for the living. And we are very interested by the everyday life. So it's something that we have always in mind in designing projects, how we can make so that architecture offers possibilities, offers freedom, and never constrain. So it's a permanent effort we are doing in designing projects, because for us it's important that finally to consider that architecture finally makes sense if it's for the people's life.
Mm. When I hear to what you say about the openness and freedom in your architecture works, I have always in mind the beautiful text by Adolf Loos describing this poor guy imprisoned in his own perfect home with this complex design, as we can mention it.
This is in a way the will of everyone to live in spaces that provide this feeling of freedom, of possibility. And freedom is a very simple word. It's just possibility to move, to be all together or to be alone, to have the space for inviting. And the recent time with the pandemic has shown how important the space for living is absolutely essential. So it's for us it's a main goal of architecture. And if I refer to my lecture, this word of inhabiting, for us is absolutely important. And it's not just dedicated to housing, because the way we are thinking for a museum, for a school, it's also the same.
Yeah, when you just touched the topic of museums and schools, I was wondering, because as you introduced your way how you deal with social housing, with this kind of refurbishment and adding new spaces and protecting these projects of demolitions, that and which is even cheaper than to demolish and to construct a new one. Is it a kind of experience that could be transferred or to other typologies like culture or education or healthcare?
Yeah, definitely, because it starts from a very precise observation of what is there, and mostly it's they are values. The problem is that our society has finally very easily think very easily that we could always make it better by replacing, but it's wrong. In fact, there is so great richness to work with some elements, and just to see what we can do with it, what we can deal with it. So we do it for the housing because it's a big issue, but it's relevant for any existing, for any landscape, for any park, for any. It's an attention of what we have, which is absolutely crucial today. When we talk about sustainability, about ecology, it starts with it. How to make with what we have, and by adding sometime a little, sometime more. It's amazing to see how we can transform situation, how we can keep have the better use of what we have. It's less expensive. It's spend much less material. And it can be made with kindness, toward those who are already using or inhabiting those places. So it's clear that for us there is no restriction to place a priori on things. But the fact is, in a way, it requires to totally radically change the way we look at things. Finally, in our culture, we always look at things to see first problems, and we define problems, and from these problems, finally the solution is okay, that should be changed. But in another way, if you start in the other way route, if you start by the observation, the evaluation of the values of what is positive, and you can see that the values are most often more important than the problems, and that the problems, you can solve them. So it's a radically change in the way we look at things, never starting by the problems, always starting by the values and the positive, which of course we have also to look at the problems because we have to solve them. But it should not be what makes a decision.
Yeah, it sounds completely clear and understandable. But anyway, we are still facing demolitions, and many works have been demolished. Just to mention the Robin Hood Gardens, for example, in London, or let's say Stadtpalast in Berlin, or we have
and so many others.
There are so many others. Yes, this is only the peak
of mad. It's just mad.
Yeah, but actually, you have done a great research. It was a lot of work because it sounds very easy, and like if you present the Bordeaux case, it's like, okay, well, it was not such a big work. It's clear we can do this. But behind this, there is this very elaborated research that took a lot of time. So I would say what we as architects can do how to improve our strategies when we are facing the pressure from side of the developers, from side of the property owners, etc. Because we are not able to do, or well, perhaps we should do a deep research on each of these kind of endangered buildings.
Yeah. No, but in fact, what the skill we have as architects, because it's also our education, it's probably to see what the other don't see. Because it's clear that if you are not a professional, you see the situation as it is in front of your eyes. As an architect, we have this ability to see how it could become, and it is this skill that we have to use to push solutions and to introduce more clever solutions. So, and I think that in a way also the attitude are also changing, and I'm a teacher also, and I see that finally the young generations, they have much more this care to save, to be more careful with the existing. So we can have finally believe that it may change in the future.
Yeah, you just put the word care. There was another, I would say, very important statement from your side or from side of your office that you put it that we should somehow rediscover the phenomenon of care, to care about things, about what already exists. Because you have not mentioned it in your lecture, but we all know that there is this big story how you've been called invited to change the Place Léon a cook, if I put it good, if I pronounce it correct, in Bordeaux, and you just said you don't need to change, you just have to clean it and to take care.
Yeah, that's true. It was in '96.
It was
it's
unbelievable,
and it's still in the mind of everyone.
It's like, because this is not really an attitude of an architect, because if you are offered a commission, then you take it.
No, I think it's a wrong way to understand the work of an architect. It's the work of an architect is not just to build or just to do. Is to take a place, to take problems, to take the complexity of the situation, and to see because we have this understanding of large situation, and to see what would be what could be done in that situation, and if the situation doesn't need to be changed, it's absolutely making architecture to say no, it's not. It should not be changed. So for me, there is a misunderstanding of what architecture is and what an architect is. It's not building at any condition. It's much more thinking to situation, embracing the complexity of things, working with specialists, with experts, making research, and finally to propose the right solution, even if sometimes this solution is not the one which was expected. But doing that is, in a way, the architect recover a kind of importance in the processes of architecture and urban planning. We are not just the one who are designing facade or anything else.
Speaking about urban planning, I read, this is again a kind of quotation of one interview which was by Jean-Philippe, not by you, but he touched the problem of urban planning, and I quote again, "We really believe in this kind of urban planning, which is no longer the master plan, but a very precise intervention. Should we understand it as a resignation on planning or on this general scale? Or was it a kind of plaidoyer of more addressed planning, of I don't know, a new approach in planning? By the way, what do you think about regulation?"
No, it's not resignation. It's much more an understanding of the urban situations we have. We all the cities, they are they are established, they have their structure, they have their buildings. And in fact, making the large master plan is not anymore relevant for such situation, because it's a view that is from too high, while finally the solution, they come from the understanding of what happened in ground, how you can use better the in-between, how you can use better the places which are badly used or unused, and how you can then continue to densify the city in a very good condition, in a good way. And it's like exactly what I explained with housing blocks. If you stay outside, you can just make a work of changing the facade for another one, because you don't understand really the core of the situation. And today, there are less and less empty land where a big master plan is necessary. So it has not to be confused with the planning of networks, of transport, of equipments. It's another layer. But the master planning that we evoke is the composition of the city, how to make the shape of the city. But the shape of the city is in many places, it's already there. And we have to transform this shape from the inside. So it's exactly what it means.
So this is exactly that we should change again in our minds, looking in more thinking about small scales and diving deeper into the structures, as you have dived in the case of the apartment block in Bordeaux, for example.
But it's not the small scale against the large scale.
Of course,
it's just a way to do the opposite way. It's the master plan is starting from the large scale, and step by step you arrive to the block of the building. And when you arrive to the block, there is no more the sense of what happens in the block. It remains a block somewhere. And the thing is how to make the opposite, starting from the inside and progressing towards the large scale. And for us, it's a strategy which is more relevant today in the cities as they are.
Okay, I'm the same opinion. Well, finally, we have a few minutes left, but I would like to ask you, you already touched the topic of teaching, and you both, Jean-Philippe and you, teach at the universities, and you have shown us a beautiful design of School of Architecture in Nantes. So how it is connected, your experience with teaching, with experiences this, let's say, other buildings of architecture schools, and how it influenced, for example, your design of the School of Architecture in Nantes, if there are some connections, some relations that you would mention.
The relation is not so straight or so clear to explain, but it's clear. It's that is teaching and designing project is connected by the fact that it's always a process of thinking, a forth and back between doubts, between questions, and between intuition, ideas. And the fact of the teaching, in fact, it is double, because at the same time, it's important to be in a way neutral with the students and have an attitude which is more to push them to develop their ideas. But in exchange, what the student discuss and how they approach the project, what are the discussion we can have with students, they send back to you also very safe question and very safe doubts. So that's a very very safe situation, because it's in a way it's like a mirror of your doubts, and we like to say to the students that when we start a project, finally we are exactly as them. We are lost, and it's important to accept to be lost when you start a project, whether you are an architect or a student, because if you are lost, you have to find your way, and you have to construct your intelligence, your structure, your knowledge. And teaching, in a way, reminds you always this attitude.
And what kind of let's say, weight do you give to research during the design process when you are dealing with students? Are they obliged to do much research or not that much?
Yeah, it's clear that we privilege the time of research, the time of taking the time to understand the situation, to understand the question, to understand this program, to go behind the programs, to see if why the program has been made like this, and so it's important to take this time, and it's something that we share in our practice, and how we try to guide the students to do. We give a lot of importance to that, and we ask them to not to draw too fast, not to define. If they have ideas, we encourage them, as we do ourselves, to define them as fragments, and to take your time to assemble fragments. So it's something very important to take the time to make sure that we have understand the situation, that we have the good feeling with it. So it's clear that when we are teaching, the semesters are always too short, and it's important that at one moment to go to the design, to the concept. But we try to push them not to be afraid of taking their time.
Yeah, this is always the problem. The semester is too short, and our time is also too short, because I already see my colleague Martin who took place here, and he's like watching on a watch. And it was wonderful to talk with you again. Like, it was a great pleasure talk with you during the small walk in Florence. Now it was again really something exceptional, and I hope very much that we will somehow later continue in the conversation. So thank you for your time. Thank you
very much. Thanks to you for the invitation. Bye-bye. Goodbye.
Ladies, what an interesting interview. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us. We're wishing you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Ciao.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Henrieta Moravčíková, samozrejme ďakujeme takisto. Bolo to naozaj skvelé rozprávanie. Ďakujeme pekne.
Potešenie bolo na mojej strane.
Úžasný program dnešného večera. S Henrietou sa ešte stretneme v priebehu Dní architektúry a dizajnu. Zhovárala sa s Lacaton zo štúdia Lacaton Vassal, aktuálni laureáti Pritzkerovej ceny, jednej z najvýznamnejších v architektúre. Klobúk dole pred tým, čo sa darí organizátorom tohto podujatia. Veríme, že ste si radi pozreli tú ostatnú prezentáciu a debatu. Pozývame pozerať aj zajtra. Zameriame sa na dizajn, taká býva sobota na Dňoch architektúry a dizajnu. Z tvorivej filmárskej dielne Becka and Lemoine si pozrieme v závere zajtrajšieho programu 2 filmy. Predstaví sa vám nemecká architektka, dizajnérka Anna Heringer, ktorá je tvorkyňou a propagátorkou udržateľnej architektúry. Pozrieme sa zajtra takisto do holandského dizajnérskeho štúdia Forma Fantasma a vypočujeme si aj prednášku kurátorky zbierky módy a textilu zo Slovenského múzea dizajnu Zuzany Šidlíkovej. No a zaznie aj prednáška a diskusia k výstave Aldo Rossi, v ktorej bude diskutovať s kurátorkou Fondazione Aldo Rossi Chiarou Spagnaro Adam Štech. A teda tie výstavy, na tie vás upozorňujeme, prebiehajú v týchto dňoch na viacerých miestach v Bratislave. Pozrite sa na Daad.sk, kde ich môžete navštíviť a čo všetko. Špeciálne teda pozývame do priestorov primaciálneho paláca hlavného mesta. No a aj dnes večer budeme pokračovať filmom a som veľmi rád, že tu so mnou v štúdiu sedí a vlastne sedí po celý čas PR manažérka, zároveň dramaturgička tej filmovej sekcie tohto festivalu Alex Kolárová. Alex, aj oficiálne dobrý večer.
Dobrý večer.
Zastupuješ tu teraz ty na malú chvíľu organizátorov. Naozaj skvelé veci sa tu dejú. Aj táto prednáška, ktorá zaznela, táto debata bola fantastická. Vidím, že si to sama užívaš. Je to príjemné, že sa to takto spája.
No áno, jasné. A hlavne tá Lacaton mi je o to bližšie, že vlastne v Bordeaux som bola a konkrétne pri tej stavbe. Takže mám k tomu aj taký bližší citový vzťah v podstate. A si myslím, že je to úžasná, už vlastne robí úžasnú prácu. Vidno to aj tým, že získala tú Pritzkerovej prize. A ja som vlastne fakt chcela, aby na festivale bola, hlavne aj kvôli tomuto.
Podarilo sa to a teda opäť tu vyzdvihujeme tú výhodu online vysielania a dokážeme sa pospájať s celým svetom. Samozrejme, bolo by skvelé, keby tu Ann bola osobne, ale tak zase niekedy možno v najbližších ročníkoch. Bolo to veľmi príjemné rozprávanie. No ale venujeme sa tým filmom, lebo teda za tie tu teraz na chvíľu si. Aké je to pokrývať práve takýmito snímkami, ktoré súvisia s architektúrou a dizajnom tento festival, lebo aj v prípade tejto sekcie ide o naozaj veľmi zaujímavé kusy. Ako sa to rieši? Aké je to možno náročné zabezpečiť takéto filmy?
S filmami by som povedala, že to je jednoduchšie ako s hostiami, pretože tam sú veľmi aj radi tí režiséri, že sa to propaguje vlastne v celom svete. Takže je to ľahšia komunikácia ako s hostiami. S hostiami je to také viacej komplexnejšie, pretože niekedy sa nám niekto ozve, potom sa nám dlhšie neozýva. Tie filmy idú pomerne celkom rýchlo. A väčšinou aj vlastne máme nejaké také spolupráce. Napríklad ako je Becca and Lemoine, ktorý vlastne zajtra budeme ich prezentovať. Tak vieme, mapujeme, že čo majú nové a zaraďujeme ich takto do Daaf. A pri výbere napríklad tých filmov to robíme vždycky tak, že sa snažíme vyberať také najaktuálnejšie filmy, čiže také tie čerstvé, architektonické, ale aj také možno, ktoré je už ťažšie si pozrieť, že sú možno že staršie, ale že ich nie sú tak ľahko dostupné napríklad na internete. A vždycky to akože riešime buď nejakou ako teraz napríklad bola Ann, tak dávame tie filmy The Imaginaries of Transformation a ten Slightly Modified Housing.
Že to súvisí s tou témou.
Áno. A akože chceme tam mať rôznorodé, že bude to nejak o nejaká biografia nejakého architekta, alebo teda aj mesto, to máme vlastne v nedeľu film The Street, alebo teda z nejakého procesu, výstavby, alebo tak.
No som zvedavý teda aj na ten ďalší program, ešte ten víkendový filmovej sekcie tohto festivalu. Veľmi dobrá kombinácia práve tých vecí, ktoré sa ťažko hľadajú a zároveň naozaj premiér, ktoré sa takisto odohrávajú počas tohto festivalu. Ak ste na Daad.sk, tak si tam prekliknite potom, ako sa dorozprávame, tú sekciu filmovú Daaf, určite ju tam vidíte pre rok 2021. Filmy sa dajú sledovať aj na Facebooku a teda dajú sa sledovať v tom priamom prenose. Tie nezostávajú visieť nikde v online priestore. Je to pochopiteľné a súvisí to s autorskými právami. Čím teda nadviažeme dnes večer? Ktoré dva filmy, a teda zostávame vo Francúzsku, budeme vidieť?
Tak ten The Imaginaries of Transformation je o vlastne transformácii paneláku v Bordeaux. Ten je taký kratší, 20-minútový a je to skôr ako keby rozhovor medzi Ann Lacaton a Filip Vassal a ešte tam je Daad, myslím, že sa volá, teraz mi to vypadlo meno jeho. A oni sa teda rozprávajú, sú tam zároveň tie zábery z toho, ako tú budovu transformujú. A ten druhý, Slightly Modified Housing, je zasa o paneláku v Paríži, tiež podobná transformácia. A tiež ma ako keby ukazuje, ako tá budova sa transformuje a zároveň je tam ten pohyb tých obyvateľov, ktorí bývajú v tom paneláku a vlastne ako to celé prebieha, že oni ich vlastne z tých panelákov nevysťahovali, čiže to robia tie práce v súvislosti s ním a ja si myslím, že to je také aj celkom v istých momentoch vtipné, takže...
No nadväzujeme teda, lebo Lacaton otvorila tieto témy, ukázala zo pár záberov práve pri takomto renovovaní panelových domov. Aktuálna fit téma aj pre Slovensko. Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Alex Kolárová zastupuje filmovú sekciu tohto festivalu a ideme si teda urobiť pekný piatkový večer s 2 francúzskými filmami. Tešíme sa, že ste piatok strávili s dňami architektúry a dizajnu, dňami architektúry a filmu a pozývame pozerať aj zajtra. Pekný večer.